What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. My webcam has decided to not work right now, so we're going to go without the face cam for at least one video today. But we got to talk about John Schneider's press conference that he held actually just like 10-15 minutes ago. It wrapped up. It wasn't very long, and he didn't say necessarily anything too illuminating, but we got to cover what he said, face cam or no, because I do feel like some of the things he said were educational and informative. So we're going to go through some of the highlights of the conference. I watched it. Most of you guys probably watched it too, but I want to talk about some of the things that he said. So first, let's lead with this from Crabtree. One of the first things Schneider said when he took the podium, he came out a couple minutes late, and this was one of the first things out of his mouth. We are all here today because we underachieved in 2023. We all did. And now we're in a situation where we all need to get better. So this is obviously something that is true, and pretty much any Seahawks fan can agree on it. But let me just say, John Schneider, you are clearly better at this than Jerry Dipoto. So congratulations on that. You are better at giving post-disappointing season press conferences than Jerry Dipoto was. So you've got that going for you. He acknowledges the failure. He acknowledges the need to do better. So he's already running laps around the other main general manager in Seattle. So going down the line here, talking about some of the things he went over, he did spend some time discussing Pete Carroll, and he got emotional about it, of course, which makes sense. These guys have been together for a long time. He certainly has every right to get emotional about it, and he did. I'm not going to get too far into the details of specifically what he said. I think he said something to the effect of, we could make a podcast to tell all the stories that we have about our time together. One thing he did say, though, that caught my attention, that makes me think that ultimately he supported the decision to move on from Pete Carroll, is something about Marty Schottenheimer once saying that you don't want to hold the same spot for more than 10 years, basically saying you shouldn't be a coach in the same place for more than 10 years. Basically the shelf life idea of you can be a really good coach, you don't necessarily have to do anything wrong, but there just comes a time where you need to move on. And that comment kind of made me feel like he supports this, because some people seem to believe that Schneider doesn't approve of this decision, and this was all a Jody Allen power trip thing, and that Schneider, if he had his way, would still have Carroll there. That's not the impression I get from a quote like that. So for whatever it's worth, that sounds to me like somebody who supports this move. Greg Bell has a little bit more here. He says that Jody Allen has given him a clear directive to build on their foundation with the next coaching hire. And the relevant point here, and I don't think that anything else would be said right now, but I'm going to come back to this concept a little bit later in this video. A clear directive to build on the foundation, not throw out the foundation and get a new one. They want to build on the current foundation. Remember that for a little bit later. More from Greg Bell. Interviews for head coaches will start tomorrow. I think they have Evero in tomorrow, and then they have Dan Quinn in the next day. So we're going to get started here. We're going to start opening it up here. We're going to bring in these various coordinators, maybe some guys who had just been let go or guys who aren't currently working as head coaches. So it's going to open up tomorrow, and it's going to be off to the races, and I'm excited for it. I'm interested to see which way we go, and it sounds like we are casting a very wide net, which is something that Schneider also indicated towards. Condotta also threw this in right here. He will have full say on all coaching staff moves, which he did not have before. He said that explicitly. And I believe he would also go on to, yes, the next thing that I want to draw attention to here, he will have final say over personnel, even with the new head coach coming in. So John Schneider is going to be the GM, and he's going to be in charge of buying the groceries, basically. And the implication is that he has not had that before. So while I do suspect that John Schneider had more say than he did before starting in 2021 over personnel, this quote kind of indicates that he didn't have complete control. He did not have final say. Pete probably maybe it was like 50-50. Maybe it was something where Jody Allen would come in and break ties. Maybe they would find some way to go back and forth with control. But the indication is that John Schneider has never had final say over personnel until now. So that does indicate that there's a new sheriff in town, and hopefully it's the sheriff that is responsible for bringing in guys like Charles Cross, Reek Woolen, Boye Mafe, Witherspoon, JSN, K9, and not so much the guys in charge of bringing in Eskridge, Collier, and Effetti, that crew. And it sounds like it will be, so this is definitely encouraging if you're somebody like me and thinks that John Schneider deserves this opportunity, if you think that John Schneider deserves this chance to really have control over a football team on both levels, coaching and personnel. I'm excited to see what he can do. He definitely 100% deserves it. A little bit more from John Boyle here when he was asked about the two key factors in finding the next head coach. The first thing he said was maintaining the culture that is established here. So we want to keep the culture. Now, I can understand this comment to some extent. I will say I don't think the culture was good the last, at least this year, right? The Jamal Adams stuff, the cigar gate, I guess we're going to call it now. Some of the stuff with press conferences, really that goes back like 3 years now, where you had players throwing coaches under the bus in press conferences, and then the coaches would come out in their press conferences and be like, oh, no, that player doesn't know what he's talking about, no. That kind of stuff, not indicative of good culture. All the players who would leave Seattle and then air out their disdain for guys like Russell Wilson and sometimes Pete Carroll. There was some bad culture going on here, so I hope that part of it is not included here. That part I don't love. There is some stuff about the culture here that is great. I do think players like playing here. I do think that some players appreciate the fact that it was a relaxed environment and that Pete Carroll was a coach that seemed to genuinely care about them on a personal level. But I hope people understand that this culture does need to improve. Like the cigar stuff, the Jamal Adams stuff, that's got to go. And then he also said, how are we going to evolve? Who's going to help us move to the next level? Which I mean, that kind of goes without saying. Things need to change around here. Things were not changing. They weren't changing fast enough. We need an offense that looks different than the offense we've been running for the last decade and a half. And this sounds to me like somebody who acknowledges that, hey, there were things about Pete Carroll that were great, but there were things about him that were not good enough. And in this case, we have seen it is now unacceptably not good enough. Dugar. Well, I don't know if the question was from Dugar, but Dugar posted this as well. Do you feel like this team is close to championship contention? Was one of the questions asked of Mr. Schneider. And Schneider said, I do. Now, I don't know if I agree with him. Are we close to a championship compared to a team like the Panthers? Absolutely. Are we actually close to championship contention? I'm not so sure. I think we have good players. I don't think we have great players. I think that we have a lot of young players that are going to get better very quickly here. I don't know if I'd call it championship contention yet, but it's good to hear that he's being positive. And this goes back to the point I was talking about earlier. There is not a lot of interest in throwing out everything right now and blowing it up and starting over. They want to build on what they already have. So that is one element that needs to be put in play here. John Schneider is indicating he's going to have control over coaching hires, personnel, and he likes this foundation. So a coach that comes in here is not going to have a ton of say over personnel. He presumably will be able to pick his staff within reason, of course, but he's also not going to be able to throw everything out and start over. That is going to make this job less appealing to some people. Some people want their own stuff, all of their own stuff. Maybe one or two pieces they keep, everything else goes out. That's what Pete Carroll did when he got here, basically. Like, he kept, Brandon Mebane and Red Bryant, I think. That's it. I can't remember if Chris Clemens... I don't think Chris Clemens was there before. So he, over the first couple years of his tenure, threw everything out because it was all bad. But Schneider here indicates, look, We don't think we're that far away. And I approve of that. Just understand that there are going to be some coaches out there who turn their nose up at that. They don't want to be part of coming in to tune up slightly what is going wrong with the Seahawks. They would want to completely chuck the engine and put a new engine in. So understand that there might be a coach out there that you really want who might want to come here, but he's not going to come here for a tune-up. He's going to go somewhere else, even a less desirable job that allows him to really start over. And kind of linking into that, we also had this, Field Goals tweeted this. Schneider was talking about Geno. I think Geno had a good season. He did admit that he started out the year not so great and then finished the year in a really strong manner. This does indicate to me that even though I strongly suspect that Pete Carroll was the big Geno supporter in the room, Schneider seems to be supportive of Geno as well. And I do expect that whoever's brought in as the next coach is going to be told that, look, Geno's going to be your guy for at least the first year. After that first year, we can see what's up, but there aren't big cap savings on moving off of him right now. We're not in position to go get a blue chip quarterback in the draft because all the blue chippers are going to be gone pretty much immediately. And we can't do better in free agency. So if you come in, that is the situation you're going to inherit, and you got to take that for 1 year. Now, I don't think this precludes us from drafting a quarterback. We can still draft a quarterback, but it's not going to be a quarterback that we just toss out there. So I still think Geno Smith is the starter in 2024. I think it's less likely now than it was when Pete was here, but I still think it's overwhelmingly likely to be the case. So you can see Schneider kind of laying the groundwork here for keeping stuff in place that he likes. And given the fact that he helped build some of it, he probably likes quite a bit of it. Dugar's got more. Their coaching search will include interviewing candidates whose teams are still playing, so everybody calm down, chill out. The list that you see is not the final list. We are going to interview guys like Mike McDonald, almost certainly. We are going to interview guys like Bobby Slowick. They're just still in the playoffs. Let them do their thing in the playoffs, and we'll get our opportunity at them eventually. Curtis Crabtree said that, according to, Crabtree has this quote from Schneider. They've heard from numerous people interested in the job, and it's been validating the impression that they have for the Seahawks organization, basically saying that a lot of people want this position, and I think it's a pretty good position. I will say this. If Jody Allen could do something or say something that would guarantee beyond any shadow of a doubt that she's planning on staying for at least another 5 years, that would do wonders for this situation. That would make these potential candidates feel so much better that the owner that was responsible for hiring them is the owner that will be there for at least another 5 years. If she can't do that, I don't know how great the position is. But if she can find a way to guarantee that going forward, then that changes the game to me. That makes pretty much anybody on the table except maybe Belichick and possibly Harbaugh. So I don't know if she can do that, but if she could, it'd be great. Final thing I want to go over from this press conference was when Schneider was asked about whether or not he'd prefer an offensive guy, defensive guy, or a special teams guy to be the next head coach. This is from Dugar. And he gave a very long answer. But one thing that he said that really stands out to me is he gave the example of Alex Smith. When he was with the 49ers in their front office, they hired... I'm sorry. When he was at Green Bay, when he hired Mike McCarthy away from San Francisco, he talked about how that messed up Alex Smith's development because he had an offensive coordinator in Mike McCarthy that he lost immediately, and then Alex Smith lost Norv Turner his second year. I think Alex Smith went through like 7 different offensive coordinators in his first 7 years or something crazy like that, and it completely screwed with him. So what he's basically saying here is you hire a head coach with a good offensive background, you don't have to worry about that, and it doesn't mess with your quarterback. So what I get from this quote is he wants an offensive guy. And I like that. I like that mentality. I think that's the right mentality to have. This, to me, sounds like a guy who wants an offensive coach. So I support that. And speak of the devil, right after the press conference was over, we heard we're going to interview with Ben Johnson. All right, everybody's excited about that one. Well, not everybody, but most people. Ben Johnson is one of the guys that the Seahawks fans tend to really, really circle the wagons around. So this is going to excite some people. And that was basically everything that I thought was of note in the press conference. He looked a little beat up. He looked a little worn out, which makes sense, right? He's working hard right now, and there's been a lot of stuff happening this week. It's been a crazy week. And yeah, I liked most of what he had to say. I think the last answer in particular was money. This idea of get an offensive head coach so that your quarterback has stability rather than hiring a defensive coach, getting an offensive coordinator who you know is going to be gone after a year or two if he's good, and then you just have to keep jerking your quarterback around with different coordinators. I love it. I think that's a great way to look at things. All right, so I'm pretty good with this press conference. Let me know what you guys think down below. I'm going to get out of here. Go Hawks. Probably another video later today, maybe a couple. I don't know, but I will be seeing you guys soon. Go Hawks. And Schneider is saying all the right things right now. Let's see if he can do all the right things.